evolution. We evolved to be a social species. So this is our grounding right here. And there's mind independent. And so it's objective. To get to the normative, the what ought we do, sometimes we have to deal with what's called Hume's guillotine. It's known as the is ought problem, right? And there's a whole conversation to be had around that. Richard Carrier has done a wonderful job of breaking this down for people to help them understand that. And he relies on Kant to do this, actually. So that's really what Carrier is leading into is Immanuel Kant's attack of Hume, using the hypothetical imperative. When we incorporate the if, we know how to get the ought from the is. And the truth of the matter, as Carrier has pointed out, almost all of our oughts actually come down to an is at some point, right? Because everything is ultimately going to be based in some objective truth. So to say you cannot get an ought from an is a misunderstanding of Hume and a misunderstanding of how any ought comes to be. So we incorporate the hypothetical imperative, and Richard Carrier has a famous example which works really well. If a surgeon wants to perform a successful surgery, he ought to sterilize his equipment, right? So whether or not the surgeon wants to perform the successful surgery is subjective, but it's safe to assume that a surgeon does want to do this because they invest a lot of money. They sign a Hippocratic oath that says, I will do no harm, and so on and so forth. But we cannot say 100% that's going to be their goal, because all goals are subjective, right? So it is a subjective goal that the surgeon does want to perform the successful surgery. Once that goal is established, you can get objective facts, and because the objective is both stance independent or any true fact is also objective, right? So it's a true fact that sterilizing your surgical equipment is significantly going to reduce your chance of introducing an infection. So you have objective facts attached to a subjective goal. The facts themselves, the action of what he's going to do is sterilize his equipment. When it comes to morality, morality is not a goal. People misunderstand this. Morality is an action. It's ought. What ought I do or ought not do? That's specifically talking about action, verbs, adverbs, right? We're going to attach it to a noun. What ought I do? The goal is subjective. Now, the goal that relates to morality is cooperation. So if we want to live in a society that focuses on cooperation, I ought not steal from people. And I can get that becomes an objective fact. So we can get to the normative of what we ought not do using true facts, which are objective. So we have objective morality, the grounding, and we have the objective morality as the normative behavior when we go through the hypothetical imperative.
So I do have a couple of comments. I think the first comment has to do with recently Sam Harris did a debate with Rich Dawkins, and the Rich Dawkins Foundation, now it's called, I think, the Inquiry Institute. They gave Sam Harris a prize, which is a kind of big prize they give to people that defend critical thinking. Some of the people that received this prize was like Daniel Leeroy. Then Rich Dawkins asked Sam Harris precisely about the guillotine. Harris believed that this guillotine, people take it like it's a law of nature. He says that it's not a law of nature. People are like somehow kill themselves because David Hume created a kind of rule, a kind of, let's say, a rule a long time ago that you cannot derive out to from fact. Sam Harris basically says that we can ground morality on science, like neuroscience, empirical facts, so on. So basically, Sam Harris decided not to solve the problem. He decided just to say that this problem, we are killing ourselves for something that somebody said in the past, like you cannot. He basically he said that the guillotine is let's say, it's fake. It's like you don't have to respect the guillotine. The second point I'd like to, then I give you the space to reply. I have to check that, but I have the feeling that Richard Carrier, he kind of, let's say, destroyed Kant, because if I remember well, you said that he based his work on Kant. I think was I have to check that, but I think it was the opposite, because he gave an example in his paper. He gave an example of Kant. Kant basically said that there is a kind of imperative, like why should, why I should not steal, for example. I'm just giving a random example here. Why should not steal? Then you ask yourself, so why should not steal? Kant basically said that because you want to be a good person, that's all. Basically, if I remember well, Richard Carroll called this bullshit, because like Immanuel Kant just create a kind of imperative that you should do just because you want to be a good person. That's all. He called, like, if I remember well, I have to double check on his page, but if I remember how he called that a bullshit. So I
So,
think
oh, I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt.
no, you can go on. You can, if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
wanna.
So there is something to really important to understand here. When I mentioned that Carrier pulled this from Kant, the hypothetical imperative was Kant's thing, and Carrier's using the same thing, the hypothetical imperative.
Yes, yeah,
What
that's
what
correct.
Kant was using, that Carrier and a lot of people who reject Kant, Kant had two different models. He called the hypothetical imperative and what he called the categorical imperative. And it's the categorical imperative that it's just simply something is true in all cases, whereas we know that that there is things are always going to be relative. So we cannot just say it's more of a Kant's more has more of a deontological approach with the categorical imperative, and I think that's what Carrier and a lot of people reject. A lot of people who believe in objective morality actually reject
I
that
think
aspect of
I think
Kant's philosophy.
he reject the idea that you have something that you have to do because you have to do, because somehow
Right.
Kurt, if I remember well, Kurt said like why you should be a good person, because you
Mhm.
have to, like there
Right.
is no
Right.
just because like cosmic you decide.
Mhm.
Because the model of Richard Carroll is based on a game theory, like the prisoner
Mhm.
game.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
he basically saying that there is a physics of morality, that mathematically it's better that you be a moral person that you not being a moral person. It's like the example of, you gave the example of the surgery, but he gave another example as well. If my memory serves me well, he gave an example of being healthy. Why should I eat this way? Because you want to be healthy. So of course you can do otherwise, but if you are a logical person,
Mhm.
well informed, if you go, yeah, the moral thing to do is to eat in a good way. He gave the example of a vegan, like vegetarian. You can eat you can eat meat, but somehow you have to know that you are being immoral, because it's not about it. You said something like. You said as well that morality does not have a goal. I have the feeling that the model of Carey is the opposite, because Carey has three components. First, you have to be a rational agent. You need
Mhm.
to be able to think. A baby cannot be moral immoral, because a bird, if a bird shit your head, you can't say the bird is immoral, because the bird has no,
Right.
nothing. It needs to be well informed. And then I gave to Rich Kelly the example of Donald Trump in his followers, because they are badly informed. So Carol agreed with me. And the third one, Carol said that you need to have a goal. Then here come a